Well, it's the question President Trump reportedly can't stop asking. Marco or JD? NBC News and the Wall Street Journal are reporting that in the hours after Trump bombed Iran, he was polling a room of 25 donors at Mar-a-Lago. The question? Whether he should support Vance or Rubio for president in 2028. The room overwhelmingly indicated Rubio. The Secretary of State has been front and center with Trump's second-term fixation on foreign policy, earning the president's praise.
Well, Marco Rubio is doing a great job. I think he's going to go down as the greatest Secretary of State in history. Look at what we've done as a presidency. Look at what we've done as an administration. They trust Marco, and so do the American people trust. He's been successful no matter where he's been.
I want to bring in Philip Bump, Emma's now columnist and contributor. So Rubio has said publicly, privately, that he would not run if J.D. Vance decided to run. So two questions. Do we believe him? Sure. And is there a pro and con for Marco Rubio here?
Yeah, I mean, people say a lot of things when they're being asked about presidential runs that end up not being the case. So, I would not believe him. I mean, he's run before. People remember back 10 years ago, 2016.
I covered a little bit of that.
Sure, right. The pros and cons for Rubio are that he is an established name. People know him. They don't know him as well as they do Vance. Vance ran, obviously, on the ticket in 2024, gives him a leg up, and, he's leading into polling largely as a result of that. The cons, I think, and I think this is probably underappreciated, are the fact that he's a member of the Trump administration. I think it is very safe to assume that by 2028, that will not necessarily be a plus for a general election, which may influence Republican voters. I still think Republican voters are going to line up behind a candidate that is aligned with Trump. But it is still the case that may be something which is a liability down the road.
Yeah, let's talk about the people who are supporting J.D. Vance, who include Don Jr., right, Elon Musk, and Erica Kirk, obviously, Turning Point USA. Right. Pros and cons of Vance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is really a proxy question about the future of the Republican Party. Right? That's really what we're talking about here. And J.D. Vance has that base appeal, in part because he's sort of inheriting it from Trump himself, that he is closer to the group of people which sort of drive what the base is motivated by. Rubio, it's not surprising that he plays better in a room of Republican donors and Mar-a-Lago donors or Doral donors or wherever it is, because that's sort of the angle that he's always, he's always been sort of the more establishment guy. And so this is really the question. And I think the question of who Donald Trump endorses between them, that's going to come down to whoever's leading Donald Trump thinks is going to win. Because the core thing for Donald Trump is he wants to be seen as the kingmaker, and so he waits to see who's going to be the king before he makes a lot of these endorsements. So that's going to leave unresolved, though, what the future of the party actually is.
So there is an interesting dynamic between J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Here's what Vance had to say recently about the Secretary of State.
Marco is my closest friend in the administration. I think he's doing a great job for the American people. I think it's so interesting. The media wants to create this conflict where there just isn't any conflict. Marco's doing a great job. I'm trying to do as good of a job as I can. The president's doing a great job. We're going to keep on working together.
Well, let's just state the obvious, though, that if you want to run for president, no matter how good friends you are, you got to go after the other guy.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we see how many times have we seen this, right? So, yes, you're good friends now, right? But if I were to start a show on another network right now against you, our friendship might suffer as a result of that, right?
What do you think, really?
I'm not yet, potentially. But, the contexts change, I guess.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. If you look at the modern history of presidents, and I guess you could argue Carter, Clinton, Obama, but especially Trump, no one 2.5 years before the actual election was considered the front runner, right?
Oh, that's such a good point, yes.
So what are the chances there is another Republican we aren't talking about that maybe people don't even really, in wide numbers, know their name, who actually could emerge victorious?
I don't know if there's anyone whose name we don't necessarily know. I mean, like we think back to Barack Obama.
As opposed to the general public.
Well, you and I are a little more tuned into politics than probably the general public, right? So I don't know. I do think it is very much the case, to your point, that 2 years prior to presidential election is an extremely poor time to start putting bets on who's going to win. If in 2006, your smart money would have been on Rudy Giuliani being the Republican nominee in 2008, right? Like, things change very quickly. And I do think that...
Remember Jeb Bush?
Yeah, I do. Please clap. I do think that in this context in particular, Donald Trump's presidency is going to evolve. I mean, we've seen how much it's changed over the past year. Yep. The associations with it, how the Republican Party views him. I think it's going to be dramatically different by the beginning of 2028. God almighty. That to the extent that it's going to be very hard to anticipate who it'll it'll be. But I do think it's someone that already has done some of the grassroots of appealing to Donald Trump's base. I just don't know which of that myriad population it might be.
Philip Bump, good to talk to you.
You too.
Always good.